Hello, welcome to Taxpayer Alert, which is sponsored by the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. I'm Al Segalla, its president, and our guest this session is Sheriff Gary Kuntz. Gary, welcome aboard.
Thanks for being here. It's good to be here.
How do you like being sheriff of Calaveras County?
It's a very challenging position, but I enjoy it. I started with this office in 1985 and kind of worked my way up and ran for sheriff and won, and it's been a pleasant experience most of the time.
Well, you have a good record. Everybody we talk to seems to really think you're doing a good job.
Well, I try. What we have, I try hard.
What challenges have you faced over the last 3 years? You've got a little bit of experience at this job now.
Probably the biggest challenge I experience every year, and I get, and it always comes right around budget time because of the dollars are tight, and I always having the people asking me, why don't we have more deputies on the street? Response times are too long, that kind of thing. So it's challenging to try to figure out ways to find funding through grants sometimes, which I'm not really crazy about grants, but sometimes I have to use those, and to properly staff the streets. And then now we have these the new jail, new sheriff's office we're dealing with, and they're about 4 or 5 months behind completion. So there's always a challenge. But I kind of like challenges.
What was the cause of most of that delay?
Change orders,
design
flaws, had to redo them. And then there's one time we got the wrong material, the beam structures weren't the right ones. Then we put up a whole floor of metal studs, and when they got them all in, they found out they were the wrong kind, so I had to take them all out. It's just been something else. That's just a fire, the fire suppression piping. They had to make some changes on that. So there's always something that needs to be changed.
One of the things is concerned lately is the gun control and the Second Amendment. What are some of your thoughts on the Second Amendment?
Well, I strongly support the Constitution of the United States. I mean, that's our guideline from it. We've been following for a long time. There's always a bunch out there who wants to try to change it or modify it or amend it or whatever. And I'm a real strong believer in the right to bear arms and have arms. And I've given out more gun permits since I've been sheriff in the last 3 years than I think we had since the department started. And of course, we got more population now, but I really encourage women, especially, to go out and get their training and come in and get a gun permit. And I like that because women that way women and men, as far as that goes, will go in and get properly trained how to handle a firearm. They go through the laws and also civil laws that they can be sued and such. So when they walk out of that school, they are really pretty proficient with a weapon, and they will take it home and treat it with respect. And versus someone that goes out and buys a weapon, never had one before, comes home with it, and the guy at the gun shop may show them how to put bullets in, and that's it. But they don't know how to unload it properly. They don't know how to handle it or store it. You got to watch for kids being around. But being we're understaffed even now, still there's times where not a bad idea to have one and be proficient with in case you really need it. Defend yourself and your family.
Where would someone go to find out more about this or get training?
I have a whole list of people that they can go to. I really don't want to say any particular name, but yeah. I know a lot of them go to this place over in Tuolumne County, and they come back. They come back and just love it. And and there's some people take it just to take it. It's not that expensive, and it's good to know.
What does it cost?
I think it's about 50. I think 70. Don't hold me to it. I think around $75 for the first time, and then every 2 years after you have a gun permit, you have to go back and get a update, and that's like 35, 40, 50 bucks, and it's less time too. It just keeps you constantly updated on the current laws and whatever else that may arise.
That sounds reasonable. If you don't have a concealed carry permit and you want to, say, shoot your pistol, how would you carry it in your car? You couldn't have it on your person, I don't think. Do you have to have the bullets out of it?
Yeah, if you're going to transport a weapon to a range or something without
Yeah.
a CCW, citizen concealed weapon permit, you would have to unload the weapon. The weapon has to be plain visible sight. You have to put it on a seat or something, and the ammunition would have to be stored where it's not ready available to like reach over and grab it and put it in the gun. So you'd have to probably store the ammunition in a trunk and then the gun in the visible area in your vehicle. You can't conceal it. You can't just put nothing over it.
That could be dangerous if if you have to go shopping on the way to the range.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Most people just hide. They stick them under a seat or cover them up or something.
Or a paper bag.
Well, yeah. I mean, otherwise, somebody would common sense. If somebody walked by and seen a gun in the car, they would definitely try to get it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if they're a crook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Now, there's been some changes at the Supreme Court. There was a case with Sheriff Richard Mack, who took the federal government to court along with another sheriff, and the issue was enforcement of the Brady Bill. The federal government required that the local law enforcement follow its orders, and without money, of course.
Of course.
And well, it seemed like nationwide the sheriffs were quite upset with it, but there was only 6 sheriffs that would go down and sign as a as also as a co-defendant or a co-plaintiff, I suppose. And well, anyway, the long story short, the Supreme Court said that the federal government cannot take over local law enforcement.
That's true.
The local law enforcement is in their own power, and that the federal government is, if local law enforcement doesn't agree with something that the federal government is doing, the federal government has to cease and desist.
That's true.
And not many sheriffs know that. Can you imagine the lives that have been saved at Waco and Ruby Ridge if those sheriffs were aware of their own powers?
Yes.
There'd be no murder. None of those murders would have happened.
No, I met Richard Mack, Sheriff Richard Mack. I met him. He was down here at a local function, say 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I read his book, and I was. It amazed me. I didn't even know at that point in time, and that's when I just was running for sheriff, that the sheriff had that much power or control of their own personal counties.
Yeah.
Because of their first line of defense. And before the federal government even come in your county, they're supposed to contact you. And I experienced that. Whenever the FBI comes into my county and wants to do a warrant or something like that, they always call ahead of time. And we offer our services, but they always used to do it by themselves. They work a little differently than we do. They have
Yeah.
we have a lot of revenue to do a lot of things we can't do, but they've been very respectful for me, and even in this last homicide with the federal FBI, they were a big help and stuff. So myself personally worked very well with the federal government most of the time, and same with the Second Amendment rights. If they try to come into my county to take everybody's guns away, I would stand shoulder to shoulder with my constituents to say, no, you don't come in. Now, they brought in a tank and an aircraft carrier and everything else, probably a different story. I mean, we would, but no, I don't think that's going to happen. Not in my lifetime or your lifetime. I don't think they're ever going to go as far as try to come in and take people's guns away from them.
I don't think it'll happen, especially if the sheriffs are aware of their own powers and know about that court case. One thing that the federal government doesn't do, it doesn't expand its powers without checking in advance to see if they could do so.
Right.
And so they do some perhaps modeling, or they do some surveys to make sure that when they make a move like that, it's not likely to be rejected.
And it's the same thing going on right now with these marijuana collectives.
Yeah.
It's against federal law to do it. California law doesn't have a problem with it, and I hope someday they get that straightened out between them, because that's and a lot of sheriffs will. You know, I think sheriffs that they're not big enough or personnel wise to deal with some of that stuff. They'll ask the feds to come in and help them. So that's another problem that we're going to be facing here pretty soon. But as a rule, we don't have too big of a problem with them here in our county at this point in time.
It seems like the marijuana prohibition is similar to alcohol prohibition back in the 30s.
Exactly.
It increased crime dramatically. And then after it was repealed, crime dropped right back to its former levels. And even though it's good that people don't abuse alcohol or marijuana or anything else, it seems like there's always a small percentage of people that will, and regardless of whether it's legal or not.
Right.
But when it's not, then you create a black market.
Exactly.
And then you bring in the crime element.
Right.
And
Big
things
money
get,
in it.
yeah, there's money in being a crook. You know, that's not a good situation.
No.
How are we doing on some of the basic things that, you know, evaluate your police, at how well they're doing? One thing is a response time. How quickly are they, on the average, are they able to get to the crime scene when they have a call?
Well, it depends on, you know, I think the last time we looked at it was an average of 45 minutes, but that depends on the severity of the call, or, you know, high priority, low priority, that kind of thing. We gotten a little better, and we're still in the process of, we got 2 more people to hire, because I ended up getting like 8 deputies back after I took over, and that's 2 shifts.
Yeah.
That's quite a few, actually, you know, in a small county like this. We're not back to full power where we're supposed to be at, but I'm very happy to have what I have. And right now, a lot of them being trained. One of my campaign problems was to put back resident deputies, and that's a deputy who lives in our community, and they work in our community, and they stay in there, and they identify, the undesirables and their habits and vehicles and geographic area. They get real know their beat.
They get to know the problem people.
Yes, exactly. That way they can pass on to the deputies that can work in their beat that when they're off. And I have one right now. We have one in Copperopolis. And now we have one in Valley Springs, and I just hired 2 guys that were 2 more deputies. That one is living in Railroad Flat, and the other one is living in Arnold area. So they're just about completed. I think by the end of October, they'll be completely done with their training program, and they have experience with law enforcement prior to coming up here, and they're going to be really good. And so that helped quite a bit. And also we have quite a few new guys in training, and when they get out on their own, it's gonna, you know, then we're planning on instead of a 4-beat system, and for the viewers at home, a 4-beat system is, you know, we have 4 beats like Valley Springs area, and there's Copper area, and Arnold area, and the West Point area. We want to put one in the middle, push the lines out a little more, shorten up their areas for response, and it'll cut the response time down quite a bit.
Yeah, I imagine it would. It'd go half the distance.
Yes, exactly. See,
Do you have a full-time officer in Copperopolis yet?
Yes. We have a resident there. Yeah, it's Wayne Noonan.
Oh, okay.
That's Wayne. He's
yeah, I know him.
That's probably the lowest part of crime there is down there. The county. It's quiet down there all the time.
Well, that's a good thing. That's where I live.
Where I live is the hottest one.
Yeah, I understand you were burglarized yourself.
Yes, I was.
That was, they got in through your bathroom window?
Yes, and after I went around and told everybody to lock their doors and windows, I had the window closed, but somebody forgot to put the little lock latch down. It was just a small window, and I think a female got in there, clawed through there, and I think it wasn't anybody local. I think it was somebody out of town. The Valley Springs is so close to Stockton and Lockford, where they just come back and forth, and they develop friends over here, you know. And for a while, we had a real bad burglar ring down there. We broke up most of that and reduced that by just had to restructure how we did business down there, and we took some patrol people off. We didn't really have them, put them in a detective so they go out and work, and we did some. We bought some equipment, electronic equipment, where we could do. I don't want to get into it because everybody knows about it, and that helped us quite a bit. So we used every piece of resource very sparingly and very conservative to do what we had to do, and we were able to get a handle on those things, and the crime has been reduced a little bit, some, not to where I like to see it or you like to see it with zero, but the main thing is that we have. I'm really concerned too. We have very safe schools, because we're one of the very few lucky counties that doesn't have to have metal detectors and stuff when the kids go to school and everything else, so they can have experience like you and I did when we went to school.
Yeah. I yearn for the day where we don't have the metal detectors anymore, and you can go on an airline without being frisked and or felt up or whatever. I think it's terrible.
Yes.
But I think that in order to get to that place, we'd probably have to win the war against organized terrorism and maybe have some reawakening of the American people about their own responsibility for their lives.
Yes.
Now another statistic that let me ask you, are you keeping statistics that are open to the public about response time?
Yeah, that's open to the public. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we can chart it and see how it's going.
Yeah. Yes, we've been doing that. Matter of fact, I wish I brought it with me. And we just had one where it showed there was a decrease.
Okay, that's
Slightly.
cool. That's a good chart.
Yeah. And response times are kind of funny because you could be, hypothetically, I could be driving by your house and you call in and I'd pull right in your driveway. It's about a less than a minute response time. There are other times I might be way in the heck over somewhere else. So,
that helps the average. And also you said there are different response times depending on the severity of the call. In other words, if there's a bad guy there, burglary in place, then you go a lot quicker. And then if it's something where you have to fill out a report, that may be a lot later.
Yeah, things like petty thefts that are a day or two old and they call in, or cold burglaries where we don't respond real fast because it's already been there and gone.
Right.
But things in progress like shootings or rape or a major bar fight or something like that, we try to get there pretty quick. They're the top priority calls.
Okay, so really the statistics that the public would want to see would be those urgent categories.
Hot calls.
Hot calls, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
That's a little cop jargon.
So the hot call statistics are the thing that really allows people to know how things are going in response times.
Right.
Okay. Now another part of this, of course, it's not your responsibility, and this is convictions. After you caught the bad guy, are they being convicted and put in jail?
I follow that pretty closely, but mostly my lieutenants and captains who run the divisions, they could follow that real close, and of course detectives, and I think we do pretty well because you won't take everybody to court. You just can't, and so the major things go to court, but a lot of them get dealt, and I mean it isn't like they could face 20 years and we give them 3 years and tell them to go. I mean they hold their line pretty close where. In other words, if somebody's looking at maybe 6 years and they get 4 or 5 versus 6 with taking them to court and getting the jury out and everything else. And
it's a plea bargain.
Plea bargain, exactly. Yeah. And there's a lot of that goes on in every jurisdiction, every agency, and Barbara does a pretty good job with that. She holds the line on them things.
And that's our district attorney.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll have her on as a guest as well.
Yeah.
She seems to also be doing a good job.
Yeah, she's got, she has to make tough decisions, It's, with us, we can go out there and put handcuffs on somebody, bring them in and write a report and stuff, and then she has to go through all the evidence and make sure we got the right kind of probable cause and all that stuff and make some, judgment calls, and it can be tough for her sometimes, but from experience, I tell you, she's like a dog with a bone. When she got something going, you ain't gonna take it away from her. She's gonna go for it.
And she's such a little girl too.
She's tough though. She's tough.
So I wonder if there's a record of arrest and conviction rates that might be available.
We should have those also, and I'm sure Barbara has those too, or we give them to Barbara or something. I'd have to check on that.
I think during the campaign, she did mention the comparison of the different rates of the counties, and I forgot what it was, but apparently it is being done.
Oh no, we're doing pretty good up here.
Now, another thing that's been a lot of concern is something Jerry Brown did as a means of saving the state money, and this is shifting the responsibility for prisoner housing and from the state to the local governments, and this is done with AB 109, which is restructuring the whole process. And I've heard some pluses and minuses about this, and I'm concerned at how's this going to affect the taxpayer and the public as to how safe we are with this 109.
You know, I've always kind of been avid against it, although I try to keep an open mind, you know, with...
Try to make it work.
Yeah, make it work, but, you know, you have to really, nowadays, you have to really work hard to get into prison. I mean, you know, you have to really go out
really
there.
bad?
Yeah, you have to really go out there and work real hard to get in prison. And there was, and this AB 109 came out. They're going to let the non-nons out, non-violent, non-sexual, non-serious. Well, these guys were everything but that. And I thought they were going to let out people like that, wrote a lot of hot checks and big corporation stuff. But no, they were coming out drug dealers. We spent years putting them behind bars in prison. They got out, and then all of a sudden, the victims were upset, the witnesses were upset, you know, because they fear retaliation. And the first year we were only supposed to get 2, and we ended up getting like 45.
Wow.
Yeah, and they bring them in the county. We weren't set up for it. The funding was very bad. You know, then all of us were fighting over the funding because, you know, who needed the funding most, because, you know, we didn't get any extra funding for. We did end up getting one deputy they hired one deputy for us to go out and just basically be a probation officer, like, you know, armed one. And then there was the ankle bracelet program, which doesn't work very well up here because of the geographical area. And there was a big, but we've since working pretty good with it. And the last homicide we had up in West Point, 2 of them people up there were AB 109 people.
Wow.
So they're dangerous people. And now all of a sudden, you know, what was nice about building this new jail was if we ever get enough staff to go to use the full jail, that first-time offenders we bring in, that we could probably rehabilitate them, turn them around, you know, before they get really bad, you know. And we were looking forward to that. And now, with this new law here, this 109 law, now if they commit a felony, commit a new crime, and it's not worthy going to state prison, I might have to keep them as high as 12 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that takes all my bed space.
Yeah.
Nobody paid me for them. Now the state of California is saying, hey, we'll pay you for them, but nobody told me a price yet, you know. And one thing like Governor Brown, I'll say is that when I first met with him on this AB 109, this was a year or so ago, he says, hey, we're trying something new. Bear with us, to the sheriffs. Bear with us, we're trying something new. If it don't work, we're going to have to try something else. Well, he knows now it isn't working. And so now they have this 3-judge panel who are appointed, not elected, federal judges, that now are saying, no, we got to leave out another 10,000 inmates. And you know, they're getting worse and worse because, you know, once you let out the not so bad, the next ones come out a little bit worse, and the next one come out. And, you know, that dumping off in the county is not the answer. You know, I mean, they're still violent people, and I think Fresno, the first round when they let them out, there was like 9 homicides. That was a result of letting these prisoners out. And rehabilitation, you know, somebody wants to get rehabilitated, they got to really want it. You're just not going to impose it on them. And
that was my next question.
Yeah. And so, you know, some will come out and, you know, you may get, you know, I'm just talking here. You may get maybe 6%, 5% that probably you'll never see them again, but the rest of them you'll see them come in because they're criminals. And I remember one time a lady that came from the Department of Corrections, rehabilitation. She came down. She was just ready to retire, and that was her function, was to rehabilitate as much as you could. And you know, and in the state prison they have machine shops, they have auto shop, body shops. We don't have any of that stuff. It's pretty expensive to run that stuff. So she said the best they could ever do was 14%, the very best. And they had the money to do it, the funding and everything else was 14% out of 100. So that were totally rehabilitated, no recidivism rate, they're gone. So I don't know, that's another challenge coming up to me in the future. And I think if they leave another 10,000 go, put 1,000 of them in the judges where the judges live, put them in their neighborhoods. See how great their program is.
The judges be watching the response time.
So that's definitely another problem. And, if they would fund us properly so we could do something, but they don't. They never fund it. States always been that way. They put in mandatory things with no funding. So what are you going to do? You have to do it.
I've thought about the this rehab process, and actually you're encouraging somebody to change their basic personality to a certain extent, their belief structure. And I think that in the schools we're taught a lot of things. The children are taught a lot of things, but they're not taught about their own mind and how their mind works,
Right.
and how they can be in charge of their own mind. In other words, they can control their own attitude, and they can. Sometimes they do learn goal structure and how to achieve particular goals, but the process of not reacting to other people, the process of the self-pride that comes about from productive work.
Take responsibility for your actions.
Yeah, and I think that we should be able to do better than 14%, and I suspect that those people that don't get rehabbed probably are pretty deep psychological problems, neurosis or psychosis.
Yeah, no, you're right. The one thing that we need to really work on, and especially in California and probably all over the United States, is that the mental health system has fallen apart. Some people that have mental health illnesses can never come out of a facility, and they keep pushing them out. Now it's cheaper to keep them in jail than to actually have a state hospital.
Yeah.
And even with these shootings, with these schools, it's like this guy with this last guy who shot these people up. Mental health problems. They always have mental health problems.
They're psychos.
Yeah, and then they go out and they get a gun from a friend or a buddy or something, and they go kill someone. Well, it's not the people. It's not the. I mean, they want to take everybody's guns away. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Deal with the issues, and mental health. We have a large mental health problem, and we also you're going to see this in the future more. Kids born under parents who are under influence of methamphetamine and these other drugs. They're gonna have problems with these kids later on. And I see it coming.
Yeah.
I see it coming. And you have to get into the schools and teach these kids at a very young age about drug abuse, and not going in there twice a year and throwing some colored books around and say no to drugs. I mean, they have to actually have classes.
Do your officers do that now?
Yeah, we go out there once in a while, but we don't have a full-time program like we should have because we're not funded for it. But it's that's what you need to do, because a hardcore addict takes 10 years to be free and clear off of drugs.
What do you see? What challenges you see coming ahead? We've already talked about some of them that you see you'd be facing if you got reelected for the next 4 years.
Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be, it's going to be continuing with the budget, but I think it's going to get better. I really do. I think they're turning around already. Of course, Calaveras County was always the last one to get something, the first one to get it taken away from. I mean, I've seen that for years around here since I've been living here, since I was 17. And getting the jail fully funded, and so I can keep 160 inmates.
Well, I think one thing for sure, we're sure supporting you.
Well,
and we're running out of time now.
Okay.
And we're really glad that you're here.
Well, I'm good to be here. It really is.
And I'm Al Segalla, Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. Visit our website at calaveras taxpayers.org, and thank you for joining us.